I'm here at a free campsite outside of Sedona in Arizona. It's just a patch of dirt, as you might be able to see, but it's really comfortable. We had some coyotes around here last night, which was also really cool. We couldn't see them, could only hear them, and it's the first time since we were in the US that I could hear the coyotes, so that was exciting. In this video I'll give some information about how I bought this van. This is our van here behind us. It is a year 2000 Chevy Express. That's the actual car part of it, and then the living quarters is called Jamboree. It's made by Fleetwood. So I'll talk a little bit about the research that I did to kind of decide which vehicle to get. I'll tell you about the types of recreational vehicles that they have in the US, and also a bit about the sort of price differences between them. I'll tell you about how we've actually managed to find this one in the end. I'll tell you a little bit about when we found it, what the process was after that. So this obviously applies specifically to me. I'm an Australian, so as an Australian I got my ESTA, which is the visa to come and travel in the US. Before we came to America, I joined a bunch of Facebook groups. So there are so many Facebook groups about overlanding, about RVing, about buying and selling RVs, all of those sorts of things. So I joined a few of those and just watched. I had a look at all the different RVs that came up, and that way I kind of saw what kind of RVs people were driving and what the price was, what people were asking for them, and then you could also often see the feedback in the comments about people who might say, oh, this is really well priced, or this is really overpriced. Facebook was a really big tool for researching. So you've got Facebook Marketplace and then also all of those groups. Another thing that is quite big in the US is Craigslist. And in Craigslist you can just pick your location and you can pick what you're looking for and it will bring that up. So we were going to land in Los Angeles and I picked on Craigslist, I picked Los Angeles and I picked RVs, and then I had a bit of a look at the pricing. So the types of RVs in the US, they put them into classes. So class A is the really large ones, like a bus. Class B is the smallest one, and they are the vans. So like the Sprinter vans, the Dodge Ram vans. And I think that this probably is the best type of RV, just a smaller van. It's nice and compact. You can probably take it into most places. You can make it look quite stealthy if you wanted to. The one behind me is a Class C motorhome, and then they have trailers and fifth wheels and basically what we would call caravans in Australia. So after looking around at these different classes of camper vans, Class A is just far too massive. There's only two of us. Although some of the Class A vehicles from around the early 2000s, they actually are quite affordable. Some of them don't have very high mileage either. So I was moderately interested in that. The Class B ones, like I said, those are the best, but they're expensive. They are probably, to buy a good one, it's going to be probably double the price of what I paid for the one behind me. With the Class B, you could potentially convert your own one, but we don't have the tools. We don't have a home base. I think it would just have been too difficult for us. So the Class B, which is this one behind us, they come in all kinds of different sizes. When it gets similar to the Class A, when you get to about the year 2000, they get quite cheap, or they get a lot cheaper. So I had a bit of a look. It seemed to me like the Class B, the one behind us, we could get one from maybe 10,000 US dollars up to 20,000 US dollars. So that was sort of the range that I was looking at. And the mileage wasn't excessively high for some of them. Some of them have had extreme high mileage. One of the other things that's also quite useful about these early 2000s models is that some of the things in them are pretty simple. There's not a huge amount of electronics, so repairs are quite easy to do. The way that I found this particular van is throughout my research, I was looking at how to do the registration for vans in the US as a tourist. Because we were going to be landing in California. I had a look at the Department of Motor Vehicles in California, their website. So it was very difficult to find the information that I was looking for on their website. I was specifically looking for, what do I need as a tourist to be able to register my vehicle in California? And it gave me some of the basic requirements of registering in California, such as a driver's license. You also needed an address, and there might have been some other parts to it as well. But I could not figure out whether I could purchase a vehicle if I had an international driver's license, which is what I have. I got my international driver's license from our RAC in Australia. Reached out to the Pan American Facebook group, which is probably one of the most active ones that I am on, and I asked them, who's got experience in purchasing a vehicle in the US as a tourist, and how did you go about it? Are you allowed to use an international driver's license? So the answers on there were basically what led me to purchasing this van and being able to get it registered. On the Pan American Facebook group, they recommended to do my registration, I can go through a company called Visitor.us. And Visitor.us, they register your vehicle for you in Montana, which is a state in the US that does not have a sales tax on vehicles. And they set you up a limited liability company with a headquarters at their office. So basically they take care of everything for you. You don't have to find an address, you don't have to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles yourself, you don't have to do all of that title changes and all of that sort of stuff. So because we were buying the car in California, if I was going to register a vehicle in California, I would have to pay sales tax, which is about 7.5%. So that could get quite expensive, depending on the price of the car that you're buying. So to buy this car, it was 17,000 US dollars. And instead of paying the tax to California, instead I employed, I suppose, Visitor.us, and I paid him a fee instead to register this vehicle, set up the LLC, send me the plates, do the title transfer, all of that sort of stuff. So if you were to register a vehicle, say, in a state that doesn't have sales tax, for example, Montana, it might not be worth the money to go through that process, the same process that I went through. But because we were avoiding the sales tax in California by registering in Montana, it actually ended up that I'd saved the sales tax, but I paid this guy instead. And I think for me, that ended up being a better outcome. So on the Pan American Facebook group, I posted, how do I do it? People gave me all this information. I found Visitor.us. It's got great resources on there. It actually steps you through how to purchase the vehicle, and some of the same steps that I'm going through now. They talk about insurance, they talk about registration, all kinds of stuff. It's a really, really useful website. On the same post, I then also got a private message from somebody in California, an Argentinian who has been traveling around the US from Canada in his RV. He was getting to the end of his travels and he wanted to sell his RV. And that RV was this one behind me. He sent all the information through, he sent me through the price, he sent me through a bunch of the details about the vehicle, and I thought, actually, this vehicle looks pretty awesome. So I'm quite tall, and therefore I do kind of would prefer to have a somewhat bigger vehicle. Although in saying that, this car behind us is probably a bit too large. If you were only two people traveling, I wouldn't recommend getting a vehicle this big, but this was actually the cheapest option, which kind of cracks me up a little bit. He reached out, we had a bit of a look, we had a bit of a chat about the vehicle. He was up north in a place called Gualala in California. I compared the vehicle that he was showing me on Facebook to other vehicles that were around, and it looked to me to be a fair deal on the price, and it looked to be in a fair condition. I spoke a little bit to the man, he seemed like a trustworthy guy. So we said, okay, we'll come and have a look. We landed in Los Angeles. We flew up to San Francisco. From there, we took a bus to a town called Santa Rosa. From Santa Rosa, the man selling the vehicle came to pick us up. He took us up to Galala, which is a couple of hours away. And we stayed there for a couple of days while we were checking the vehicle out. So we didn't do a lot of official pre-checks. The vehicle was driven by the then owner from Santa Rosa to Gualala, and it's a very, very windy, very small road. The vehicle handled really, really well. I could tell even as a passenger there was no funny noises, there was nothing rattling out of place. All of that sort of stuff looked completely fine. My partner and I, we basically did a lot of our own checks. You can check things quite easily. Again, visitor.us sometimes has some of this information on there as well. You can find so much information on YouTube about how to do your very own pre-purchase inspection. And again, I'm a novice. I'm not a mechanic or anything like that. We just kind of checked a lot of it ourselves. The oil level was good. All of the fluid levels were good. There was not a lot of rust or corrosion or anything inside of the vehicle. The belts looked good. The underneath of the vehicle looked really good. The interior of the vehicle looked totally fine. There was clearly, at some point, there was a leak in the roof. You could see some staining, but we could see that it had been resealed since then. So after a couple of days, or probably after one day of going through, testing all the different things in the vehicle, checking all the different things in the vehicle, we decided, yes, this car seems fine. It seems fair for the price. So then we moved on to the next step, which was to transfer the money. I've used in the past a service called TransferWise. They're now just called Wise, and they're really quick with transferring money. So because it was $17,000 US, I couldn't transfer it all in one chunk. So I transferred it in two different lots. So I transferred one lot on one day and the next lot on the next day. Luckily at the time we were sort of just hanging out at the house where this man was staying, the seller was staying, and we didn't have to rush to get anywhere. So after transferring those funds, we did the title. So on the title in California, one of the other things that you can do as a pre-check is they have a little box on the top right hand corner which actually tells you whether the car's been written off previously, so whether it's been salvaged, so if that box is clear, then you pretty much know that your vehicle hasn't been written off, which is very, very good to know. So we filled out all of the paperwork. I signed up with visitor.us. In the visitor.us website, they have a dashboard and they have all these little tasks to complete. So it's really, really easy to use, this visitor.us, and the man is very responsive as well who runs it. So if you ever had a question, you can just reach out straight to him, but he's got so many different resources. So after transferring the money and getting hold of my visitor.us sort of membership, I suppose, and starting that whole process, signing up the title paperwork, it's pretty clear what you need to sign to be able to transfer that. We then completed that registration process by sending the title off to visitor.us, and he sent me a temporary registration tag. Because the car is moving from being registered in California to being registered in Montana, I had to get new license plates. Luckily for me, he is able to, after setting up the limited liability company and registering the vehicle, you can get a temporary tag. So we got a temporary tag, printed it out at the library, and you stick it to the back of the car and you keep your temporary registration paperwork in the vehicle. And that gives you 40 days to drive around on that temporary registration. So we could pretty much get going straight away. Then the next challenge was to get insurance. So to be able to travel on the roads here in the US, you need to have your registration. Obviously, having the title for the vehicle is useful, but the registration is necessary. And then you also need insurance. So insurance, again, on the visitor.us website, he actually has a lot of resources about how to get the insurance. There were two main insurance agencies that I looked into because they had fairly easy websites where you can get a quote. There was Good Sam's, which I looked into first, and then there was another one called Progressive. The Good Sam's website started annoying me after a little while. I couldn't quite work around the website that well, so I gave up on Good Sam's. I then went to Progressive. I had to get a 12-month, I had to sign up for 12 months, but I could pay month by month for their insurance. It is comprehensive insurance and also roadside assistance. I don't think we can change the tires on this thing by ourselves because it's just so big. I know that I'm covered if I hit someone else, or if an uninsured driver hits me, or if I get stuck on the side of the road. So I quite liked all of that, and I could really see on the website, it was really clear what was covered, what was not covered. So I quite liked that about Progressive. I did have to call them at the end, Progressive, about putting in my license details because it was an international driver's license. I couldn't just put that in onto the website. So that was a little bit annoying. I couldn't do the whole registration on the website after I got the quote, but I rang them up. They were pretty fast to answer the phones, and they were pretty quick to put all the information through that needed to be put through, and then I did the payment. Looking back now after a little while, I've actually noticed a couple of places have discounts for people who have Good Sam's insurance. So there are some RV shops that have discounts or deals. There are also some RV parks that have discounts if you are a Good Sam's member. So kind of think probably the price is about the same. I didn't really get to the Good Sam's pricing because I couldn't really be bothered too much with their website. But so far, Progressive seems totally fine. So those are all the things that we had to do to get our vehicle going. So as soon as we had signed off the title paperwork, we got the temporary registration, and our insurance was sorted, we could take off. So in another video, I'll do a bit of a tour about this particular RV, sort of what it looks like. I think that this is the best price, the most well-priced vehicle that we could have bought here. If we had purchased a Class B, we would have paid a lot more upfront, but of course your fuel would have been a lot cheaper. So you kind of have to weigh it up. This car has got a V8 engine. It is a little bit more expensive, but we paid $17,000 for it, whereas with the Class B we might pay $35,000 plus for it. So I guess you decide. So I hope that some of this information was helpful. If you have more questions, feel free to ask, but all of the information that I got was Facebook and visitor.us. So if you'd like to go and have a bit of a look, have a bit of a research on any of those two places, I think that would be quite useful, and reach out if you want to know anything else.